Welcome to mile marker 31. Out here on the road, nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Tonight's story takes us from the streets of Atlanta up into the mountains of Chattanooga. A veteran trucker, hauling a classified military load, finds himself hunted by shadows on the interstate. What starts as a routine haul turns into a deadly game of survival. Buckle up, because what happens when the hunted becomes the hunter will keep you on the edge of your seat. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and join us on this road where mystery and the open highway collide. And that's where tonight's run ends. A simple haul out of Atlanta turned into a battlefield on the highway. And one trucker proved he wasn't just a driver, he was a soldier who knew how to survive when the road closed in. Out here, you never really know what's riding in those trailers, or who might be watching from the dark.
Chapter 1. The weight of the road. The night air in Atlanta was thick and muggy. That kind of southern humidity that clung to your skin even after the sun dipped below the skyline. The truck stoplights buzzed behind me as I tightened the last strap on the load. The trailer wasn't marked with any logos, just a matte gray container sealed with military locks and tape that read U.S. Property Confidential. I'd been on plenty of runs, but this one was different. They didn't tell me what I was carrying. No manifest, no papers, just a sealed envelope with instructions. Pick up at the depot in Atlanta. Delivered to the base outside Chattanooga. No questions asked. As a trucker, you learn not to ask too much. But I wasn't just a trucker, I'd worn the uniform once. Spent years overseas where silence and secrecy could mean the difference between life and death. So when I saw those markings, I knew this wasn't some routine haul. I climbed into the cab, the seat creaking under my weight, and turned the key. The big engine rumbled to life, a sound that usually comforted me, but tonight it felt heavier, like the hum of a war drum. I adjusted my mirrors, checking the glow of Atlanta fading behind me as I eased onto I-75. Traffic was light, mostly late-night commuters and the occasional rig rolling north. The highway stretched out like a black ribbon through Georgia, the yellow lines vanishing into the dark. My headlights carved tunnels through the night, illuminating the reflective eyes of deer just off the shoulder. I should have felt calm. I had the road to myself, a thermos of coffee at my side, and miles ahead. But something weighed on me. Maybe it was the cargo. Maybe it was the way the dispatch guy avoided eye contact when he handed me the paperwork. Or maybe it was just old soldier's instinct that told me I wasn't alone. I shifted in my seat, cracked the window, and let the warm night air rush in. The CB radio hissed with static. No chatter tonight. That was unusual. On most runs, I could count on hearing truckers swapping stories, warning about speed traps, or just killing time. Tonight, nothing but silence. I kept scanning my mirrors. Every pair of headlights that came up from behind made my pulse tick faster. Most passed without incident, but the way some drivers slowed as they went by, the way their faces seemed to linger on my truck, it didn't feel right. Atlanta was fading behind me now, and the open stretches of highway were giving way to darker, emptier roads. I gripped the wheel a little tighter. I'd been in combat zones that felt less tense than this. Something told me the night was just beginning. Chapter 2. Eyes on the highway. The I-75 stretched long and dark, lit only by the high beams of passing cars and the faint orange glow of exit signs that promised towns I had no business stopping in. The road had that lonely hum, the kind that seeps into your bones when you've been behind the wheel too long. For a while, I thought maybe it was just me being paranoid. A vet hauling a military load through the south, of course, my nerves were sharp. But then I saw it again. A black SUV. No logos, no plates I could read from a distance. It came up from behind, lingered in the mirror longer than it should have, then passed. Except, it didn't really pass. It drifted alongside me for just a moment, long enough for the driver to tilt his head and look. not the casual glance of some bored commuter. No, this was a cold, deliberate look, like he was memorizing me, the rig, the trailer. Then he hit the gas and pulled ahead. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Probably nothing, I muttered to myself, trying to believe it. But a few minutes later, the same SUV appeared again in my mirror, lights low, just far enough back to keep from drawing too much attention. I tapped the CB radio, more out of habit than hope. Breaker 19, anyone else got eyes on a black SUV tailing northbound on 75? Silence. Just static. That was wrong. This stretch of highway was usually alive with chatter warnings about way stations, troopers hiding in the median, or some driver bragging about how many miles he'd crushed that day. But tonight, nothing. Like the whole frequency had gone dead. I shifted in my seat, the old instinct stirring in my gut. In the service, you learn to trust your senses when something feels off. My senses were screaming now. Up ahead, another car slowed as I approached. A beat-up sedan, the kind you'd see in any southern town. But instead of pulling over or speeding up, the driver kept glancing at his side mirror straight at me. Same look, same too long stare. I eased off the accelerator, letting distance grow between us. My hand tightened around the wheel. They weren't just random drivers. They were watching me, watching the load. And the worst part? The road was opening up, growing emptier the further north I drove. Less traffic, less cover. If something was coming, it would come soon. My jaw clenched. I'd been downrange before. I knew the look of an ambush even on American asphalt. Something told me this convoy wasn't going to end in Chattanooga the way it started. Chapter 3, the road closes in the night had gone too quiet. No chatter on the CB. No other trucks rolling close by. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the blacktop stretching endlessly under my wheels. Then it happened. Up ahead, the taillights of that beat-up sedan began to glow brighter as it slowed down too much, too fast. I eased on the brakes, heavy rig groaning under the sudden change in pace. The sedan wouldn't move. It just crawled in front of me, forcing me down from 70 to 40, then 30. The black SUV reappeared behind me, its high beams flashing once before settling back at just the right distance to box me in. My gut twisted. I was trapped. The stretch of I-75 we were on had no exits for miles. Dense trees lined both sides, shoulders too narrow to pull off without risking a jackknife. This wasn't just bad traffic, this was deliberate. The sedan ahead swerved slightly, straddling both lanes, blocking any chance I had of overtaking. My knuckles went white on the wheel, and then I saw them. Two more cars merging from the right shoulder like they'd been waiting for me. Their engines revved hard as they closed in, one sliding up alongside the driver's side of my cab, the other hugging the trailer's blind spot. Every instinct in me screamed the same word, ambush. The SUV behind me surged forward suddenly, closing the gap. My mirrors filled with its grille, its headlights blazing like spotlights. I cursed under my breath. They're hurting me. I flashed my high beams at the sedan, leaning on the horn, trying to bluff them into moving. But they didn't budge. Instead, the car to my left inched closer, dangerously close, close enough that I could see the glint of a pistol in the passenger's hand. The barrel caught the reflection of my own headlights for a split second. That was all the confirmation I needed. They weren't just following. They were taking this truck. I felt the thrum of adrenaline hit me, that old familiar surge I hadn't felt since the desert. My pulse slowed even as my breathing quickened. The world narrowed down to movements, angles, and options. I was outnumbered, boxed in, and about to be dragged out of my own cab. But I'd been in worse, much worse. I muttered to myself, voice low and steady. All right, you want me out? Let's play. Chapter 4, Inside the Ambush. The sedan in front slammed its brakes hard, and I had no choice but to bring 80,000 pounds of steel and cargo grinding to a stop. The rig shuddered as the air brakes hissed loud enough to echo against the tree line. Before the wheels even settled, doors flew open. Shadows spilled out onto the asphalt. 3 men from the sedan, 2 from the SUV behind, and another stepping out of the car that had been pacing my trailer. 6 in total, all armed. The one closest to me, a tall figure in a hoodie, yanked his mask up over his face and pointed his pistol straight at my windshield. He motioned with the barrel. Out, now. I raised both hands, slow and deliberate, palms up where they could see. My heart was steady, too steady. Combat training had a way of switching the body into that cold mode where fear turned into calculation. I cracked the door, letting the heavy cab groan as I climbed down. The asphalt was warm under my boots, still holding the heat of the Georgia day. A man shoved me hard against the side of my truck, pressing metal into my ribs. Keys. Now. His voice was muffled behind the mask, but I caught the nervous edge. He wasn't a professional. None of them were. Their stance, the way they held their guns, it was sloppy. Street crew, not trained operators. I handed over the keys without a fight. My breathing stayed slow, controlled. They thought they had me. The leader barked orders, waving 2 of the men toward the cab. Another pair circled toward the trailer. They were excited, too excited. They had no idea who they just cornered. As one of them pressed me harder against the truck, I angled my body slightly, just enough to glance at the reflection in my side mirror. I could see the whole scene laid out. 6 men, scattered and out of position. The leader pacing, 2 fumbling with the cab door, 1 still watching me but with his weapon low. Sloppy. I thought back to Afghanistan, to a night ambush where we'd been outnumbered 3-1. I remembered what the sergeant had drilled into us. Don't fight the numbers, fight the mistakes. And these men were full of mistakes. I let my shoulders sag, playing the role of the defeated trucker. The man at my side shoved me again, laughing under his breath. Not so tough now, huh, old man? He had no idea. I shifted my weight, slow, subtle, ready for the moment his attention wavered. Because when it did, the soldier in me wasn't going to stay quiet any longer. Chapter 5. The Counterattack. The man holding me against the truck made his first mistake. He let his grip loosen when he looked over his shoulder at the others wrestling with the cab door. Just a second of distraction. That's all I needed. I snapped my elbow back into his ribs with all the torque I had. He doubled over with a grunt, and before he could recover, I pivoted, snatched the pistol from his hand, and drove my knee into his chest. He hit the ground hard, weapon now in mine. Shouts erupted. Hey, what the? The leader spun, gun raised, but he was too slow. I dropped behind the front wheel of the rig, using 80,000 pounds of steel as my shield. Bullets cracked through the night, pinging off the metal like angry hornets. The adrenaline hit me full force, but it wasn't panic. It was clarity. Every sound, every movement slowed down. I leaned out just enough to fire 1 clean shot into the leg of the man sprinting toward me. He went down screaming, his weapon skittering across the asphalt. That left 4. The pair at the cab abandoned the door and dove for cover. Another tried circling wide around the trailer, but I already had him in my sights. I squeezed off 2 more rounds, 1 into the ground at his feet, just to scatter him, then ducked back as return fire sparked against the rig. I could hear them shouting at each other, panicked, uncoordinated, no clear chain of command. That was their second mistake. I bolted low along the length of my trailer, keeping to the shadows. My boots barely made a sound against the asphalt. Years of moving through dark alleys overseas came flooding back. I slipped behind one of the cars they'd used to box me in. Through the tinted glass, I saw one man crouched, fumbling with a fresh magazine. His hands shook. Amateurs. I swung the door wide, slammed it into his face, and yanked him out onto the pavement. A swift strike to the temple and he was done. 3 left. The night air reeked of hot engines and gunpowder. My pulse was steady, every muscle alive with a kind of focus I hadn't felt since combat. I pressed my back against the side of the car, gripping the pistol tight, and whispered to myself like I used to in the desert. Adapt, improvise, overcome. This wasn't their ambush anymore. It was mine. Chapter 6. The game turns, the gunfire slowed, hesitation creeping into their rhythm. They weren't soldiers, they were cornered men, realizing their plan was unraveling fast. I slipped into the tree line off the shoulder, letting the night swallow me. The highway roared with the distant sound of a semi-downshifting somewhere miles ahead. But here, it was silence, just my breathing and the faint shuffle of boots on asphalt. They'd lost track of me. "Fan out, find him," one of them barked. His voice cracked, trying to sound in control. It reminded me of rookies on their first patrol, pretending they weren't scared. That was their mistake. Fear makes you loud. Loud makes you dead. I moved low, circling behind the SUV that used to box me in. Through the open door, I saw another man crouched, his weapon shaking as he scanned the shadows. He was waiting for me to come running across open ground. I didn't. I came up behind him, quiet as a ghost, one arm around his neck, the other yanking the pistol from his hand. He thrashed for a second, then slumped into unconsciousness. I laid him down silent, like I'd done in villages overseas where sound could bring a dozen more enemies. Two left. The leader was shouting again, desperate now. "He's just a trucker. Take him out." If only he knew. I ghosted back toward the rig. One of the remaining men was creeping along the trailer, gun raised, peering under the wheels like I'd be stupid enough to hide there. His back was wide open. I didn't hesitate. A swift strike with the butt of the pistol across his jaw dropped him flat. The metallic clatter of his weapon on the pavement echoed through the still night. The leader froze at the sound, his eyes darting wildly. He was the last one standing. I stepped out from the shadows, pistol leveled, my silhouette lit by the glow of my own truck's headlights. The look on his face said it all, the bravado was gone. His weapon wavered in his hands. "This load," I said, my voice steady low, carrying across the empty highway, "wasn't yours to take." For a moment, we just stared at each other. Him, trembling, desperate. Me, calm, unflinching. The soldier in me had already decided how this ended. I took one step closer. His courage broke. The gun clattered to the asphalt as he bolted into the trees, vanishing into the dark. And just like that, the ambush was over. I stood there in the glow of my rig, the night silent again except for the ticking of cooling engines and the rasp of my own breath. 6 men came for me. None got what they wanted. The truck was mine again, but I knew the road ahead wasn't going to be peaceful. Not after this. Chapter 7. Long road to Chattanooga. The night was still again, but it wasn't quiet. Not inside me. My ears rang from the gunfire. My hands smelled of cordite and sweat, and my heart thudded like the old war drums I thought I'd left behind years ago. I climbed back into the cab, sliding behind the wheel as if nothing had happened, though the blood on my knuckles told a different story. The rig's engine roared to life, steady and unbothered, like it hadn't just been the center of a battlefield on asphalt. The black SUV sat half-angled across the lane, riddled with panic and silence. One of the men still groaned somewhere behind me, clutching his leg. The others were sprawled unconscious or had melted into the dark woods. I left them there. I wasn't the law, and I wasn't their savior. My job was simple: deliver the load. I eased the truck forward, tires crunching over scattered glass. Headlights cut through the lonely stretch of I-75, swallowing the road ahead. My mirrors showed only shadows now, no tail, no headlights lurking behind me. But I didn't relax. Not yet. Mile after mile, I kept scanning those mirrors, expecting more cars to appear, another ambush to spring. But the highway remained empty. Just me, the endless asphalt, and the steady hum of the engine. Crossing into Tennessee, the road began to rise into the foothills, the city lights of Chattanooga faint on the horizon. A part of me should have felt relief mission almost complete, but another part knew better. That cargo in the trailer wasn't just steel and bolts. Whatever it was worth blood. And men like the ones I'd left on the road weren't the only ones willing to pay that price. I gripped the wheel tighter. The CB crackled once, a burst of static, then fell silent again. It felt like a whisper from the dark, reminding me the night wasn't done with me yet. When I finally rolled past the gates of the base outside Chattanooga, guards waved me through after checking the sealed locks. No words exchanged, no questions asked. Just like the dispatch had promised. I parked, killed the engine, and sat there in the silence of the cab. For the first time since Atlanta, I let out a long breath. Job done. Load delivered. But as I stared at my own reflection in the windshield, I knew one thing for sure. The soldier in me wasn't gone. He'd just been sleeping, waiting. And tonight, on a lonely stretch of highway, he woke back up. I turned the key, shutting the truck down completely, and muttered to myself with a bitter smile, "Welcome home, soldier. The road's still a battlefield."
The interstate carries more than freight. It carries secrets, danger, and ghosts of the past that never really stay buried. If you felt the weight of this story, don't forget to subscribe to Mile Marker 31. Hit that bell so you won't miss the next time the road takes you someplace you'll never forget. Until then, keep your eyes on the mirrors and stay safe out there.